Savannah Thornton had a secret hobby, stalking her boss on Instagram. It wasn't weird, it was research. He was Joshua Wayne, billionaire CEO of Wayne Enterprises, face on the cover of Forbes, yachts in Monaco, beautiful women in the comments, movie star life. And Savannah, his assistant for 8 months, watched. It wasn't a crush, it was anthropological observation. He lived in a different world. Fascinating. Total lie. It was a massive crush. It was Monday and Savannah was alone. She opened his Instagram. New post. Beach. Shirtless. Oh my God. She zoomed in. Comments exploding. Some girl named Courtney Houston. Blonde and a model. Recent photo on his arm. Another one. Why are you looking at my Instagram photos? It was Joshua. Behind her, seeing everything. Savannah screamed. Closed the laptop at the speed of light. He was smiling. Security. Hackers. So many hackers. He opened the laptop and there was his beach photo, zoomed in on the abs. He looked at the screen. Then at her, checking out my abs. In that moment, she wanted to evaporate. Chapter 1. The incident and the fallout.
I swear it's innocent.
Monday was Savannah Thornton's favorite day for a very specific and absolutely forbidden activity. Joshua Wayne had a meeting from 9 to 11 with Japanese investors, which meant 2 glorious hours of empty office, absolute silence, and perfect opportunity for the most embarrassing part of her routine. Stalking her boss's Instagram wasn't exactly a crime, but it definitely fell into the category of things no one should ever find out about, especially when that boss was Joshua Wayne, billionaire CEO of Wayne Enterprises, a face that graced business magazine covers with irritating frequency, and owner of an Instagram profile that looked like it came straight out of a Forbidden Fantasies catalog. Savannah settled into her office chair, strategically positioned in front of his office door, grabbed the cup of Earl Grey tea she'd prepared 5 minutes earlier, and opened her laptop with the guilty excitement of someone about to commit a victimless crime. His Instagram loaded on screen and she sighed, because of course Joshua Wayne had posted a new photo. Of course. The man was prolific in content that should be classified as occupational hazard for executive assistants, with secret, desperate crushes. The photo showed a beach that looked like it came from a 5-star resort commercial, sand too white to be real, water too blue to exist on any ordinary planet, and Joshua Wayne shirtless, because apparently the universe had a cruel sense of humor. Savannah tilted her head, bit her lower lip, and did what any rational person would do in this situation. She zoomed in. It wasn't discreet zoom. It wasn't accidental zoom. It was zoom with clear intention to study every detail of those abs that looked sculpted by a Renaissance artist with a gym obsession. Oh my God, she murmured to the screen, completely alone in the silent office. No witnesses, no cameras, absolutely no risk of getting caught doing something so embarrassing. This can't be natural. Does he have a personal trainer 24 hours a day, or did he sell his soul? The comments on the photo were exactly what she expected. Hundreds of beautiful women leaving fire emojis and hearts, some bold enough to write things that would make Savannah blush to the roots of her hair if she tried to type them. And then she saw the name that always appeared, that name that made her stomach twist uncomfortably. Courtney Houston. Blonde model, CEO of a fashion startup, always at events with Joshua, always smiling for cameras next to him, always too beautiful to be real. Savannah clicked on Courtney's profile with the same masochistic enthusiasm of someone poking a wound to see if it still hurts. And of course it still hurt, because the woman had posted a recent photo with Joshua at some charity event, the two of them dressed like a magazine cover couple, him in a tuxedo and her in a dress that cost more than Savannah's annual rent. Another one, she sighed, returning to his profile and zooming in again on the beach photo, because apparently self-torture was her secondary hobby. Why are you looking at my Instagram photos? The voice came from behind her, deep and amused, and Savannah felt her entire body freeze before her brain fully processed the absolute disaster that was this situation. She spun in her chair with speed that should be physically impossible, laptop almost falling from her lap, tea spilling on the desk, and Joshua Wayne was there, standing 3 meters away, perfectly cut grey suit, tie slightly loosened, and the expression of someone who had just witnessed something extraordinarily funny. The scream that came from Savannah's throat was high-pitched enough to shatter glass. She slammed the laptop shut with violence that probably damaged the hinge, and stood up so fast the chair rolled backward and hit the wall. "Mr. Wayne, I wasn't. You shouldn't. Meeting. You have a meeting." "Client had a family emergency," Joshua explained with irritating calm, walking toward her desk with slow, measured steps, like a predator who knows exactly how scared the prey is. "Cancelled 15 minutes ago. Thought I'd take advantage of the free time to review reports, but apparently you were busy with much more interesting activities." Savannah felt her face heat up in a way that should trigger fire alarms, and her brain went into total panic mode, desperately searching for an explanation that made sense, any explanation that didn't involve admitting the humiliating truth. "I was checking security of the profile. Hackers are a serious problem on social media, and as your executive assistant, it's my responsibility to ensure that all digital platforms are protected against cyber invasions and—" "Savannah." He stopped in front of her desk, placed his hands on the dark wood surface, and leaned slightly forward, invading her personal space in a way that made her heart race. "You were zooming in on my photo, at the beach. I saw it." "Zoom?" she repeated in a voice 3 octaves higher than normal, gesturing uncoordinatedly. "No, absolutely not. It was technical magnification for pixel analysis and authenticity verification, because deepfakes are a growing threat and—" Joshua took her laptop, opened it with a casual movement, and the screen lit up, showing exactly what Savannah prayed to all the saints it wouldn't show. His Instagram beach photo, zoomed in so close on the abs that it was possible to count each individual muscle. He looked at the screen, then at her, and the corner of his mouth curved into a smile that was pure amusement. "Security," he repeated slowly, savoring the word. "Of my abs." Savannah wanted the floor to open up and swallow her, wanted a meteor to fall on the building, wanted any natural disaster or zombie apocalypse to happen at that exact moment to avoid continuing to exist in that reality. "Please," she whispered, closing her eyes and wishing with all her might that this was a nightmare. "Please tell me you weren't there the whole time." "Saw everything," Joshua confirmed, with a tone too cheerful for the situation. "From you clicking on Courtney, analyzing photos of her with an expression I'd describe as jealousy, going back to my photo and zooming in, again, with audible commentary about abs not being natural. Oh God," Savannah covered her face with her hands, sincerely wishing that cause of death on a death certificate could be listed as terminal embarrassment. "Exactly how long were you standing there watching me?" "Long enough to find it fascinating." He placed the laptop back on the desk, still smiling in that way that did strange things to her heartbeat. "You've always been so professional, efficient, quiet. Seeing you stalking my Instagram with the dedication of a private detective was revealing." Savannah slowly lowered her hands, staring at him with a mixture of horror and growing indignation. "Revealing," she repeated in a weak voice. "Great, wonderful. I'll start mentally preparing my resignation letter then." "Why would you do that?" Joshua tilted his head, genuinely curious, and crossed his arms over his chest in a way that made the suit stretch across his shoulders in an extremely distracting manner. "You're the best assistant I've ever had. Coffee always perfect, schedule organized with military precision. You anticipate needs before I realize I have them." "Why resignation?" "Because I got caught stalking you," Savannah practically shouted, gesturing to the laptop as evidence of the crime. "On Instagram, with Zoom, that probably violates 12 different conduct policies." "Technically, it doesn't violate any," he corrected in a thoughtful tone. "Profile is public, anyone can see it. You were just more dedicated in your viewing." Pause. "And frankly, I'm curious. Do you have a crush, Ms. Thornton?" The question dropped between them like a bomb, and Savannah felt her brain shut down completely before restarting in absolute denial mode. "No!" The answer came out too loud, too fast, too defensive to be convincing. "Absolutely not. You're my boss. That would be completely inappropriate and unprofessional, and I was just... curiosity. Normal curiosity about a famous person's life." "Curiosity." He repeated the word slowly, testing it on his tongue. "About my physique?" "About your life," Savannah corrected quickly, feeling her cheeks burn. "You're a billionaire CEO who appears in Forbes and tabloids. You're always at parties and events. You have a life that seems like a movie. It's relevant contextual information." Joshua couldn't hold back his laughter, a deep and genuine sound she'd never heard before in 8 months working for him, and something inside her chest tightened dangerously. "So you read tabloids too?" he asked when he stopped laughing. "For work?" "Sometimes," she admitted reluctantly, looking away at a non-existent point on the wall. "For professional context." Context. He was clearly enjoying himself too much. "Of my abs." "Stop saying abs," Savannah practically begged, covering her face again. "Please, I'm 25 years old and dying of embarrassment. Have mercy." The silence that followed was long enough for her to risk looking between her fingers, and she found Joshua watching her with a strange expression, something between amusement and something else she couldn't identify. "Okay," he said finally, straightening his posture. "Proposal. We forget this. You continue being the perfect assistant. I pretend I don't know about the stalking." "It's not stalking," she mumbled without conviction. "Savannah." He waited until she looked directly at him. "You zoomed in enough to analyze muscle fiber. It's stalking." "Okay, maybe a little," she admitted in a small voice. "And maybe—" He leaned in again, deliberately invading her personal space, voice dropping to a more intimate tone. "You tell me what else you saw, in the tabloids. Might be useful to know what they're saying about me, outside perspective." Savannah blinked, slowly processing what sounded dangerously like an invitation to continue stalking, but now with official permission. "You want me to report tabloid gossip?" "Consider it market research," he suggested with a small smile, "about my public image." "That's really weird," she pointed out, but already felt the tension in her shoulders decreasing slightly. "Not weirder than zooming in on abs," he shot back, and she groaned. "I'm never going to forget this, am I?" "Definitely not." He grabbed the blazer he'd left on the visitor's chair and walked toward his office, stopping at the door to look back. "And Savannah, next time I post a shirtless photo, I'll think of you zooming in, just so you know." She threw her notepad at him, which he dodged while laughing, and closed the office door, leaving Savannah alone with an accelerated heartbeat, face on fire, and growing awareness that her life had officially become way too complicated. The following week was psychological torture, disguised as corporate routine, and Savannah quickly realized that Joshua Wayne had an elephant's memory and a cruel sense of humor when it came to teasing. Monday morning, she placed coffee on his desk as she'd done every morning for 8 months, perfectly prepared, exact temperature, no sugar because he preferred it bitter, and was almost leaving when his voice stopped her. "Savannah, can you bring coffee?" he asked without looking up from the documents he was reviewing. She looked at the cup she'd just placed on his desk, then at him, confused. "It's already there, sir." "Oh, right." He finally looked up, expression perfectly innocent. "Sorry, was distracted thinking about Instagram, you know how it is." Her face heated instantly, and she gritted her teeth, breathing deeply to maintain professional composure. "Very funny, Mr. Wayne." "I thought so." He smiled, small and provocative. "And Savannah? Joshua. I think stalking puts us on a first-name basis, don't you think?" She left the office without responding, but could hear his laughter through the closed door, and a traitorous part of her brain registered that she liked that sound, liked being the reason for his laughter, which was a dangerous thought that needed to be buried immediately. On Tuesday, during a meeting with the finance department, Joshua took off his blazer because the room was too hot with the broken air conditioning, and Savannah made the fatal mistake of looking. It was a quick look, practically a reflex after having seen those abs in high definition on Instagram, but he noticed. Of course he noticed. His green eyes met hers across the conference table, and the corner of his mouth curved into a smile that promised revenge. "Enjoying the view, Miss Thornton?" he asked as soon as the meeting ended and the office emptied, voice low enough for only her to hear. "I'm working," she protested, gathering papers with abrupt movements, "and I was looking at the slide presentation, not at you." "The presentation is on the opposite wall," he pointed out reasonably. "You were definitely looking at me." "Arrogance isn't attractive, you know," she threw over her shoulder, leaving before he could respond, but could feel his gaze burning into her back. Wednesday was the day Derek Morrison, VP and Joshua's best friend, showed up at the office for a strategic meeting and observed the dynamic between boss and assistant with narrowed eyes of someone seeing something interesting. Savannah brought water for the meeting, and Joshua made a completely unnecessary comment about her always anticipating his needs, with emphasis on always, that made Derek look between them with an increasingly curious expression. After Savannah left, Derek crossed his arms and stared at Joshua with a look that wouldn't let this pass. "You're teasing your assistant," Am I? Joshua asked with overly false innocence, continuing to read the report. Constantly. Derek leaned forward. Hand smiling, you never smile at work. At least not like that, not genuine smiles. Nonsense. Joshua. Derek waited until his friend finally looked at him. What happened? Silence. Joshua considered not telling, but Derek had been his best friend since college and had the irritating ability to eventually extract the truth. She was stalking me on Instagram, he finally admitted. I caught her, zooming in on a photo of me at the beach. Derek's laughter was too loud for a corporate environment. He threw his head back and laughed until tears appeared in the corners of his eyes. You're kidding, Savannah. Quiet, shy, professional Savannah? The same. Joshua couldn't avoid his own smile. With a digital magnifying glass on my abs. And now you're flirting with her. I'm teasing, Joshua corrected. There's a difference. There's no difference, Derek shot back, still laughing. And you like her, admit it. She's my assistant. So? Derek gestured impatiently. You're 28 years old. You own the company. You can do whatever you want. And frankly, I've never seen you so light with anyone. Savannah is good for you. Joshua didn't respond, but he also didn't deny, and Derek smiled like someone who just won an argument. Meanwhile, on the other side of the building, Isabel Song was extracting a complete confession from Savannah with the efficiency of a professional interrogator. They were in the 12th floor cafe, supposedly on lunch break, but Isabel had completely abandoned her salad in favor of staring at her best friend with wide eyes. You zoomed, Isabel repeated for the 5th time, voice rising in volume with each repetition. On his abs? It was an accident, Savannah hissed, looking around to make sure no one was listening. Like a serial accident that happened multiple times, but still an accident. With a magnifying glass, Savannah. Isabel was clearly enjoying herself too much. You used the zoom function intentionally to study muscles. I know, Savannah groaned, sinking into her chair. I know it's terrible and embarrassing and completely inappropriate. And he saw, Isabel asked, leaning forward. Everything? Everything, Savannah confirmed miserably. Including the part where I zoomed in on Courtney to compare and feel inadequate, went back to him, zoomed in again and murmured, oh my God, loud enough for him to hear. And he didn't fire you? Worse? Savannah took a long sip of tea, needing caffeine even though it was noon. He's teasing constantly, brings up Instagram in every conversation, makes comments about stalking. Yesterday he asked if I'd enjoyed the view when he took off his blazer in a meeting. That's flirting, Isabel clapped her hands, too excited. He's flirting. It's torture, Savannah corrected. Elaborate psychological torture disguised as professional teasing. Savannah, Isabel held her friend's hand on the table. Joshua Wayne, billionaire CEO who never smiles, is teasing you, specifically you. Making inside jokes about Instagram. This isn't torture, it's attention from him to you. Attention that comes from maximum humiliation, Savannah muttered, but her traitorous heart sped up a little. It's still attention, Isabel insisted. And let's face it, you've been stalking him for months. Maybe it's time to admit you like him. Of course I like him, Savannah admitted, finally saying it out loud. He's gorgeous, smart, too successful to be real, and now that he's teasing, I've discovered he's also annoyingly funny. But it doesn't matter because he's Joshua Wayne, and I'm the assistant who got caught zooming in on his abs. You keep saying abs, Isabel observed with a smile. He started it, Savannah defended, and now I can't stop. They laughed together, and for the first time since the catastrophic Monday, Savannah felt the tension in her shoulders decrease slightly. Until Isabel asked, so are you still stalking? Savannah didn't answer, but the guilt on her face was answer enough. Savannah, it's an addiction, she protested. I can't stop. Yesterday he posted a gym photo, and I looked at it for 3 straight minutes, no zoom because I learned my lesson, but still. You have a problem, Isabel declared, but she was smiling. I know, Savannah agreed miserably. Friday arrived bringing both relief and growing tension, because the week of teasing had established a new dynamic between Savannah and Joshua that she didn't exactly know how to navigate. He didn't stop teasing, but the teasing had gained a layer of something more, something that seemed dangerously close to actual flirting instead of just fun at her expense. Good morning, Savannah, he greeted when she entered his office with morning reports, and there was something in his tone that made her look up suspiciously. "Good morning, Mr. Wayne," she responded cautiously, placing papers on the desk. "Quarterly financial reports, updated schedule for next week, and confirmation of the meeting with German investors on Tuesday." Perfect as always. He took the documents but didn't look away from her. "Do you have plans for the weekend?" The question caught her off guard because in 8 months he'd never asked about her personal life. No. Probably reading. I have a pile of historical romances waiting." "Historical romances," he repeated, smiling small. "Didn't know that." "You never asked," she pointed out, echoing a conversation they'd had days ago, and saw recognition in his eyes. "I didn't ask," he agreed softly. "I should have asked. About many things." Silence stretched between them, charged with something Savannah couldn't name until she cleared her throat. "Do you need anything else?" "No." He hesitated. "Maybe yes. Do you still check Instagram for security?" Her face heated immediately. "Mr. Wayne, Joshua," he corrected gently. "And I'm not teasing. Genuinely curious." Savannah considered lying, but something in his expression made her opt for honesty. "Sometimes less, much less, and never at work. But you still check." "Technically, your profile is public," she defended weakly. "It is," he agreed, and then added something that made her heart skip. "Maybe I should start posting with a specific audience in mind." Before she could process what that meant, his phone rang with an urgent call and the moment passed. Savannah left the office with her mind spinning and pulse racing, not knowing exactly what was happening, but feeling that something had changed. That night, alone in her small but cozy apartment, Savannah broke her own promise and opened Instagram. Joshua's profile loaded, showing a new post from 2 hours ago. Jim, shirtless again, because apparently he had a personal campaign to kill executive assistants via heart attack. Simple caption, "Morning workout." She looked at the photo, studied it for an embarrassing amount of time. Didn't zoom because she had some residual self-control, but definitely looked. For 3 full minutes, maybe 4, or was it 5, didn't matter. She looked for way longer than normal. "I have a problem," she murmured to the empty screen, but didn't close the app. And in a penthouse on the other side of the city, Joshua Wayne was also looking at his phone, specifically at the notification showing that Savannah had viewed his story. He smiled, small and private, and Derek was absolutely right. He liked her. Much more than he should. Monday was going to be interesting. Chapter 2. The provocation intensifies.
2 can play.
2 weeks after the Instagram incident, Savannah had reached an important conclusion about Joshua Wayne. The man had a photographic memory specifically reserved for other people's embarrassing moments, and a sense of humor that bordered on recreational cruelty. She knew this because he brought up the stalking in literally every interaction they had, as if it were a new Olympic sport, and he was competing for the gold medal in professional teasing. It was a perfectly normal Tuesday when Joshua appeared in her office with an expression that immediately set off all of Savannah's internal alarms, because she'd already learned to recognize that specific gleam in his green eyes that meant trouble. He leaned against the doorframe of her office with studied casualness, holding his phone in a way that seemed very deliberate. "Savannah," he began with an overly casual tone, "I saw that Courtney posted a photo of us yesterday from the charity event. Did you check?" A calculated pause. "For security?" Her face heated instantly, and she gripped the pen she was holding with a force that would probably leave permanent marks on her fingers. "Mr. Wayne," she responded with a tone that was somewhere between exasperation and justifiable homicide. "Just asking," he continued, with an innocence so false it was practically offensive. "I know you keep up. For cybersecurity reasons, of course." Savannah breathed deeply through her nose, counted to 10 mentally, and then decided 10 wasn't enough and counted to 20. "I have work, Mr. Wayne. Reports that need to be finalized, meetings to schedule, productive things that don't involve discussion about Instagram." "Of course," he agreed too easily, but the small smile at the corner of his mouth told a completely different story. "Just wanted to make sure my digital security is in good hands, or rather, in good eyes. Very attentive eyes." She threw her notepad at him, which he dodged with reflexes too quick to be fair, and left the office laughing low, leaving Savannah alone with her face on fire and the growing awareness that this was going to continue indefinitely unless she did something drastic. The change in Savannah's strategy happened on a Thursday 3 weeks after the original incident, when she finally decided that being a passive victim of Joshua Wayne's teasing wasn't working for her mental health. If he was going to torture her with constant references to stalking, then she was going to fight back, and fight back with surgical precision that would make him think twice before teasing her again. The perfect opportunity came during breakfast, when Joshua commented on the coffee she'd prepared. "Coffee's different today," he observed, taking a sip and slightly frowning. "Less dedication." Savannah looked at him with a perfectly innocent expression, blinking slowly before responding with a tone so sweet it practically dripped honey. "Maybe. I was a bit distracted because of Instagram. Someone posted an abs photo again last night. Very hard to focus on work after that, you know?" The effect was immediate and spectacular. Joshua froze completely. The coffee cup stopped midway to his mouth, his green eyes wide with genuine surprise. That would have been hilarious if Savannah wasn't too busy trying to maintain a neutral expression. Several seconds passed in absolute silence before he placed the cup back on the saucer with exaggerated care and looked directly at her. "She fought back," he murmured, more to himself than to her. And then a small smile curved his lips in a way that made something strange happen in Savannah's stomach. "Touché, Miss Thornton." "I learn from the best, Mr. Wayne," she responded with the same excessive sweetness, and for the first time since the Instagram incident, she felt a sense of victory run through her veins. The chemistry between them changed at that exact moment, shifting from a one-sided dynamic of teasing to something completely different. It was banter now, a back-and-forth game that was simultaneously fun and charged with a tension that Savannah couldn't fully name. He teased, she fought back. She gave verbal jabs, he responded with sharp comments. It was a dangerous and addictive dance that left them both smiling in ways that definitely weren't appropriate for a professional relationship between boss and assistant. Derek Morrison noticed the change immediately, because of course he did. The VP had an almost supernatural ability to detect changes in Joshua's behavior, probably developed over years of friendship since college, and he wasted no time pointing out the obvious. "You two are flirting," Derek declared during a strategy meeting on Friday, after Savannah had left the office carrying the reports she'd brought. "We're bantering," Joshua corrected, without looking away from the computer screen, but Derek could see the small smile he was trying to hide. "It's the same thing," Derek insisted, crossing his arms over his chest and leaning back in his chair in a way that clearly indicated he wasn't going to let the subject die. "It's not," Joshua argued, finally looking at his friend with an expression that tried to be annoyed but failed miserably. "Joshua." Derek leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You've smiled more this week than all of last year. Literally. I've kept a mental count." A pause. Joshua slowly closed the laptop, considering the statement. "That's disturbing. That you keep a mental count of my smiles. You like her," Derek continued, completely ignoring the attempt to deflect. "Admit it." "She's my assistant," Joshua responded, but his voice came out without conviction. "So?" Derek gestured impatiently. "What's the problem? You're an adult. She's an adult. You clearly have chemistry." "And it's complicated," Joshua finished weakly. "Since when do you avoid complicated?" Derek shot back, and Joshua had no answer for that. That night, alone in her apartment, Savannah broke the promise she'd made to herself and opened Instagram on her phone. It was a nightly ritual now, something she did with a mixture of guilt and anticipation, always after work, always in the privacy of her bedroom, as if keeping the stalking confined to a specific time and place made the whole thing less pathetic. Joshua's profile loaded, showing a new post from a few hours ago. Charity event. Him in a black tuxedo that fit his body in a way that should be illegal, and a date next to him. A beautiful woman. Dark hair, perfectly styled, evening gown, bright smile directed at the camera. The comments had already started accumulating. "Perfect couple. She's lucky. You two are gorgeous together." Savannah looked at the photo for exactly 47 seconds because she was counting mentally as a form of self-imposed masochism. She analyzed the woman in painful detail, comparing features, finding 1,001 ways she herself didn't measure up, and then let out a long, tired sigh before closing the app. Jealousy was ridiculous. She knew it was ridiculous. Joshua Wayne wasn't hers, never would be hers, and the fact that they exchanged teasing at work didn't mean absolutely anything beyond him having questionable humor and her having developed a new ability to fight back. But even knowing all that, rationally and logically, the uncomfortable feeling in her chest refused to disappear. The company's corporate event happened the following week, a mandatory cocktail party at a 5-star hotel that Savannah was forced to attend because of her position as executive assistant to the CEO. She wore a simple dress, black and professional, nothing extravagant but appropriate for the occasion, and arrived at the event hall expecting to spend the entire night doing forced networking and avoiding conversations about fourth-quarter spreadsheets. What she didn't expect was to see Joshua Wayne standing on the other side of the room with Courtney Houston's arm firmly linked in his, the two of them talking with a group of investors with the ease of people who were completely comfortable in their own skin. Courtney was stunning as always, wearing a dress that was pure elegance, blonde hair falling in perfect waves over her shoulders, and the way she leaned into Joshua while laughing at something one of the investors had said made Savannah's stomach turn uncomfortably. Savannah knew because she stalked enough to know that the tabloids were going to have a field day with this. Photos of them together, speculation about a relationship, headlines about the most powerful couple in the corporate world. It hurt in a way it shouldn't hurt, considering she had no right to feel anything about who Joshua Wayne chose to spend time with. She spent the next half hour carefully avoiding the side of the room where they were, engaging in superficial conversations with department colleagues and drinking champagne she didn't really want. She was almost convinced she could make it through the entire night without having to interact with either of them when a female voice sounded behind her. "You're Joshua's assistant." Courtney Houston was standing less than a meter away, a polite smile on her face and a glass of red wine in her hand. "Yes," Savannah responded, trying to keep her voice steady and professional. "Savannah Thornton. Savannah, right?" Courtney tilted her head slightly, blue eyes studying Savannah with an uncomfortable intensity. "Yes, he talks about you. A lot." Surprise must have shown on Savannah's face because Courtney laughed low before continuing. "He does?" Savannah asked, genuinely shocked. "Says you make the best coffee, that you anticipate his needs before he even realizes he has them, that you're—" a deliberate pause. "Essential." Courtney's smile wasn't exactly friendly. It had a competitive quality to it that made Savannah straighten instinctively. "Impressive for an assistant." Savannah didn't know how to respond, her mind racing to process the information that Joshua apparently talked about her to Courtney. But before she could formulate any response, his voice sounded between them. "Courtney, Savannah." Joshua appeared next to Courtney with the speed of someone who had crossed the room quickly. "You met?" "Yes," Courtney responded, and her hand immediately found Joshua's arm in a way that seemed very possessive. "I was getting to know your assistant." The tension in the air was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife, and Joshua clearly noticed because his eyes narrowed slightly as he looked between the two women. "Courtney, we need to circulate. The German investors just arrived." He turned to Savannah, and there was something in his look she couldn't decipher. "Are you okay?" "Great," Savannah lied, forcing a smile that probably looked as fake as it felt. The truth was she wasn't okay at all, but admitting that out loud wasn't an option. Joshua continued looking at her for a few more seconds, as if he could see through the obvious lie, but Courtney pulled his arm with gentle insistence. "Joshua, let's go." They left together, Courtney glued to his side in an intimate and familiar way, and Savannah stood there watching them walk away. They looked perfect together, she had to admit. Both beautiful, successful, powerful. His world, definitely not hers. "You're looking like an abandoned puppy," Isabel's voice sounded next to her, making Savannah jump slightly. "I'm not," Savannah protested automatically, but knew the denial was useless. "For you are." Isabel followed Savannah's gaze across the room. "Is that Courtney, the one from Instagram?" "He's with her," Savannah murmured, taking a long sip of champagne. "Clearly." "Or it's business," Isabel suggested reasonably, but Savannah shook her head. "Isabel, look at them, he's smiling." And it was true, Joshua was laughing at something Courtney had said, his head tilted toward her in an attentive way. "He smiles at you too," Isabel pointed out, but Savannah just sighed. "Teasing, it's different." Isabel didn't respond, but the way she squeezed Savannah's hand in a silent gesture of support said everything that needed to be said. The end of the night came with a relief that Savannah felt in every tense muscle of her body. She grabbed her purse and was heading for the exit when she noticed a familiar figure standing near the hotel's main entrance, illuminated by the soft light of the lobby chandeliers. Joshua was alone, without his tuxedo jacket, just the white shirt with sleeves slightly rolled up to his elbows, and he wasn't smoking, but simply breathing in the fresh night air. "Savannah," he called when he saw her, and his voice had a soft quality that was completely different from the teasing tone she was used to. "Mr. Wayne," she responded, and the formality returned automatically, a defensive barrier against the discomfort still pulsing in her chest. "You left early," he observed, hands in his pockets, posture relaxed, but eyes attentive. "Work tomorrow," Savannah responded with a firm tone, maintaining the distance between them. "I need to rest." "I have work tomorrow too, but I stayed," he pointed out, and there was an implicit question in the statement. "With Courtney," Savannah said, and the words came out more bitter than she intended, the tone revealing much more than she wanted to admit. Joshua noticed immediately, his expression changing to something more serious. "It's business, Savannah." "Doesn't look like it," she shot back before she could censor herself, and immediately regretted it when she saw the way his eyes widened slightly. "Savannah," he began, taking a step toward her, but she was already backing away. "Good night, Mr. Wayne," she interrupted, turning and walking quickly toward the parking lot before her voice failed, or worse yet, before the tears burning behind her eyes finally fell. Joshua stood at the hotel entrance, watching her walk away, his mind racing to process the interaction. The bitterness in her voice when she mentioned Courtney, the way she'd practically fled, the rigid formality that had returned after weeks of relaxed banter between them. She was jealous? He murmured to the empty night air, and the realization of that sent a wave of something warm and unexpected through his chest. Maybe Derek was right. Maybe this was much more complicated than just teasing. Chapter 3. The Misunderstanding.
It shouldn't hurt.
Monday started with a headline that Savannah saw before even getting out of bed, because of course she'd set up Google alerts for Joshua Wayne's name, which was a completely new level of pathetic that she preferred not to analyze too deeply. Her phone buzzed at 6:30 in the morning with a notification that made her stomach sink in a painfully familiar way. Joshua Wayne and Courtney Houston, new power couple. The photo accompanying the headline was from the corporate event the night before, Joshua and Courtney smiling at the camera, with an intimacy that seemed to confirm all the speculation Savannah had desperately tried to ignore. Their arms were linked, their bodies leaning toward each other in a way that suggested familiarity and comfort, and the caption below the photo speculated about a relationship that was apparently blossoming quietly away from the spotlight. Savannah stared at the phone screen for way too long, feeling a sharp pain in her chest that was completely disproportionate to the situation, considering Joshua Wayne wasn't hers, had never been hers, and would never be hers. She was just his executive assistant, the person who prepared his coffee perfectly and organized his schedule with almost obsessive precision, not someone who had any right to feel jealous or hurt, or any of the complicated emotions that were twisting in her stomach. Professionally, this shouldn't matter. Personally, it was devastating in a way she wasn't prepared to handle. Getting to the office required an amount of courage Savannah didn't know she possessed. She dressed with extra care that morning, choosing an outfit that screamed professionalism and competence, as if the right clothes could serve as armor against the discomfort burning in her chest. Coffee was prepared and waiting on Joshua's desk when he arrived, perfectly made as always. Exact temperature, no sugar, and his schedule was printed and organized next to the cup. But Savannah didn't stay to greet him like she normally did. She left everything arranged and returned to her office before he arrived, closing herself behind the computer screen and a mountain of work she planned to use as an excuse to avoid unnecessary interaction. Joshua noticed the change immediately. Of course he did. The man had an irritating ability to notice small details, and Savannah's absence, greeting him with the morning report and a cup of tea for herself, was a significant change in the routine they'd established over the months. "Good morning," he said, appearing in her office doorway with a coffee cup in hand and a slightly confused expression on his face. "Mr. Wayne," Savannah responded, without looking away from the computer screen, her voice coming out formal and distant in a way she hadn't used in weeks. "You're quiet," he observed, entering her office without invitation and stopping in front of her desk, with a posture that indicated he had no intention of leaving until he got answers. "I'm working," she responded, still not looking at him, her fingers typing something on the keyboard that probably made no sense, but at least gave the impression she was busy. "Quieter than usual," Joshua insisted, and there was a note of genuine concern in his voice that made something painful tighten in Savannah's chest. "I have a lot of work," she said, finally looking at him with a carefully neutral expression. "Quarterly reports, planning for next week's conference, reviewing supplier contracts. If you don't need anything else, I really need to focus." She looked away before he could respond, turning her attention back to the computer screen. And after a moment of hesitation, Joshua left her office with slow steps, confusion clear in the tense posture of his shoulders. Derek Morrison appeared in Joshua's office 20 minutes later, closing the door behind him with a firm click and crossing his arms over his chest in a posture Joshua immediately recognized as the "we're having a serious talk" posture. "What did you do?" Derek asked without preamble, getting straight to the point in a way that was simultaneously irritating and efficient. "Nothing," Joshua protested, dropping the pen he was holding and leaning back in his chair with a frustrated sigh. "Savannah's different, cold," Derek pointed out, sitting in the visitor's chair without being invited. "And you're looking at her office door every 3 minutes like a dog waiting for its owner to come home." "I'm not," Joshua started, but Derek interrupted him with an impatient wave of his hand. "Joshua, think. What happened between yesterday and today that would make Savannah go back to frozen professional mode?" Joshua considered the question, replaying the events of the previous night in his mind. The corporate event, the strange interaction between Savannah and Courtney, the way she'd practically fled when he tried to talk to her at the exit. "She saw me and Courtney together at the event," he said slowly, the realization beginning to form. "And?" Derek pushed. "And the tabloids came out this morning, speculating about a relationship," Joshua completed, grabbing his phone and quickly searching for the headlines he'd ignored earlier. The photo of him and Courtney appeared on screen, and he immediately understood the problem. "Does Savannah know it's just business?" Derek asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. No," Joshua admitted, running his hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. She never asked and I never explained." "Then go explain," Derek said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. "I already tried to talk to her this morning. She barely looked at me," Joshua responded, and the frustration in his voice was palpable. "Try again," Derek suggested, getting up from the chair, "and this time be honest, completely honest, about Courtney and about what you feel for Savannah." Joshua's attempt to fix the situation happened right after lunch, when he finally gathered enough courage to invade Savannah's office with the determination of someone who'd decided the situation needed to be resolved immediately. "Savannah, about the tabloids," he began, but she interrupted him before he could complete the sentence. "I don't care about your personal life, Mr. Wayne," she said, her voice coming out cold in a way that made Joshua stop mid-step, his expression changing to something between shock and frustration. "It's not personal life, it's work," he corrected, his voice coming out firmer now. "With Courtney, business partnership." "With Courtney, got it. You don't need to explain," Savannah responded, still not looking at him, her fingers continuing to type on the keyboard with a speed that was clearly mechanical and without real purpose. "I clearly need to because you're acting," Joshua began, frustration starting to bleed into his voice in an unusual way. "Professionally," Savannah suggested, finally looking at him with a carefully neutral expression. "Cold," Joshua practically roared, and it was the first time in 8 months Savannah had heard him raise his voice, the sound reverberating in the small office in a way that made her blink in surprise. The silence that followed was heavy and uncomfortable, charged with all the things neither of them was saying. Savannah didn't expect his outburst, and the way his green eyes were fixed on her with an almost tangible intensity made her heart race in a way that had nothing to do with professionalism. "Sorry if my professionalism bothers you," she said finally, her voice coming out lower now but still firm. "It doesn't bother me," Joshua responded, and some of the anger had left his voice, replaced by something that sounded dangerously close to vulnerability. "Your distance bothers me." "Why does it matter?" Savannah challenged, standing from her chair to face him, arms crossed over her chest in a defensive posture. Joshua opened his mouth, closed it, and then realized with painful clarity that he didn't have an answer to that question. At least not one he was ready to give out loud. The silence stretched between them, until finally, without saying anything more, he left her office with heavy steps. The week that followed was an amplified version of the terrible Monday. Savannah maintained the distance with a determination that bordered on obsessive, interacting with Joshua only when absolutely necessary, and always with a rigid formality that made each conversation feel like a diplomatic negotiation between enemy countries. She prepared his coffee perfectly, organized his schedule with the usual efficiency, but all the warmth that had started to develop between them in previous weeks had completely evaporated. Joshua hated it, with an intensity that surprised him. He discovered he missed her in a way that went far beyond missing a competent assistant. He missed the teasing, the small smiles when she fought back against his comments, the blush that rose on her face when he caught her off guard. He missed the real Savannah, not the professional and distant version she'd become. On Thursday, he tried once more to recover some shadow of the dynamic they'd had before. "Savannah, did you see my latest Instagram post?" he asked with a tone that tried to be casual. "Wanted your security opinion." She looked at him with a completely neutral expression, without a trace of the humor that used to shine in her eyes when he referenced the stalking incident. "Looks secure. Anything else?" The game was over. The teasing had lost all its fun when she didn't participate anymore, and Joshua felt something sink in his chest with a force that was almost physical. "Shit," he muttered to himself after she left. "I screwed everything up." Courtney Houston noticed something was wrong on Friday when she and Joshua met for a closing meeting on the investment his company was making in her fashion startup. He was distracted in a way that was completely atypical, his eyes drifting to his phone every few minutes, his attention clearly elsewhere. "You're distracted," she observed, after the third time he checked his phone in 10 minutes. "I'm not," Joshua denied automatically, but even he knew the lie was weak. "You are," Courtney insisted, putting her pen aside and leaning back in her chair with an expression that was part amusement and part exasperation. "Is it the assistant?" "Savannah?" "No," he responded too quickly to be convincing. "Liar." Courtney tilted her head, studying him with attentive blue eyes. "You look at the door every time it opens, waiting for her to come in." "I'm not waiting," Joshua protested, but the way he immediately looked at the door when footsteps sounded in the hallway completely contradicted the denial. "Joshua, I'm observant, and I know when a man is interested. You are." "In her," Courtney declared with a certainty that left no room for argument. A long pause. "She's my assistant," Joshua said finally, but his voice came out without conviction. "And I'm a business partner." "But you don't look at me like that," Courtney pointed out with a small smile. Silence. Joshua considered denying again, but what was the point? "I screwed up," he admitted, his voice coming out tired. "How?" Courtney asked, her expression changing to something gentler. "The tabloids. Us, she saw. Thought that—" He gestured vaguely, unable to complete the sentence. "That we're a couple," Courtney completed, and then she laughed, a genuine laugh that echoed in the office. "Joshua, you know I'm a lesbian, right?" "Yes, but she doesn't know," Joshua practically shouted, frustration finally overflowing. "Then tell her," Courtney shot back with logic so simple it was almost offensive. "I don't know. You're CEO of a billion-dollar company. You solve complex problems daily. How can't you solve this?" Joshua didn't have a good answer for that. The charity gala happened Saturday night, a huge event at a luxury hotel downtown that Joshua was required to attend because of connections with investors and business partners. Courtney was also going because their presence together would serve to publicly finalize the announcement of the investment in her startup, and Joshua spent the entire week dreading the event with an intensity that was completely disproportionate. Savannah wasn't going to be there. It wasn't a work event. It wasn't mandatory for executive assistants, and Joshua knew she'd probably spend the night in her apartment, doing the things he didn't know she did because he'd never bothered to ask before. The realization of that he'd spent 8 months working alongside her without really knowing her, was painfully uncomfortable. While Joshua was at the event wearing a tuxedo that cost more than most people's monthly rent and smiling for cameras next to Courtney, Savannah was in fact in her apartment, wearing comfortable flannel pajamas and desperately trying to focus on a Netflix series she'd already watched 3 times. Her phone was on the coffee table, the screen glowing with temptation, and she was fighting against the urge to open Instagram with a determination that was failing miserably. Eventually, inevitably, she broke. Instagram loaded showing Joshua's story, posted 20 minutes ago. A photo from the gala, him and Courtney again, both dressed like modern royalty, simple caption, "Closing deals." Savannah looked at the photo for a time she refused to count, feeling the familiar pain settle in her chest like a physical weight. It was ridiculous. She knew it was ridiculous. But that didn't make it hurt less. She finally admitted to herself, there alone in the silent apartment, the truth she'd been avoiding for weeks. She liked him, much more than she should, and never in a million years would it be reciprocated. He had the Courtneys of the world, beautiful and powerful women who moved in the same social circles as him, and she was just the assistant who'd been caught zooming in on photos of him on Instagram. Back at the gala, Joshua was having a completely different experience. The event was unbearable in a way he hadn't anticipated, each minute dragging like an hour, each conversation with investors seeming superficial and meaningless. He checked his phone obsessively, waiting for a message he knew wouldn't come. "You're miserable," Courtney observed when they finally got a moment of privacy away from cameras and curious investors. "I'm fine," Joshua lied, but didn't even try to make the lie sound convincing. "You're miserable," Courtney corrected. "And looking at your phone every 5 minutes, waiting for Savannah to text?" "She's not going to text," Joshua admitted, putting his phone back in his tuxedo pocket with heavy resignation. "Because she thinks we're together." "Idiot," Courtney declared without beating around the bush, and the way she called him an idiot had an affectionate quality that took the sting out of the word. Joshua looked at her, at the gala around them, at all the important people he should be impressing, and then made a decision. "I need to go," he announced abruptly. "The gala started 1 hour ago," Courtney exclaimed, but there was a smile growing on her face. "I don't care, I need to fix this," Joshua said, already starting to move toward the exit. "Finally!" Courtney practically shouted, pushing him toward the door. "Go! Get her! Explain everything! And if she doesn't believe you, call me. I'll confirm I'm gay and happy in a committed relationship." Joshua left the gala with the speed of someone fleeing a fire, completely ignoring the paparazzi, who shouted confused questions as he got into his car. "Joshua, where are you going?" a photographer yelled. "To fix a mistake," he responded, and then he was in the car, driving through the illuminated city streets with a specific destination in mind. He had Savannah's address in the human resources files, information he'd never paid attention to before, but that now seemed extremely relevant. Her apartment was in a modest building on the other side of the city, far from the luxury penthouses and expensive neighborhoods where Joshua spent most of his time. And he parked the car in front of the building at 10 o'clock at night with his heart beating in a completely irrational way. He climbed the stairs to her apartment on the 3rd floor, stopped in front of the door with the number that matched the files, and knocked before he could reconsider the complete insanity of this situation. The door opened, revealing Savannah in flannel pajamas with a kitten print, her hair loose and messy, as if she'd run her hands through it multiple times, her eyes wide in complete shock when she registered who was standing in her hallway. "Joshua?" she asked, her voice coming out in a confused whisper. "What? Courtney's a lesbian," Joshua interrupted, the words coming out in a desperate rush. "Married for 3 years to a woman named Sophia Marquez. We were never a couple. The tabloids lie because the story sells better than the truth, and I'm a complete idiot for not clarifying this before." He stopped to breathe, his chest rising and falling visibly. "And I owe you apologies. A lot of apologies." Savannah stood at the door, processing his words in silence, and Joshua waited, his heart beating so loud he was sure she could hear it. Chapter 4. The Explanation and the Kiss.
Don't disappear again.
Savannah remained standing in her apartment doorway, looking at Joshua Wayne in a complete tuxedo in the poorly lit hallway of her building, and her brain simply refused to process the reality of this situation. There was something deeply surreal about seeing a billionaire in an Armani tuxedo, standing between a door with a faded welcome sticker and a fake plant that her next-door neighbor had abandoned in the hallway 3 months ago. "You left the gala?" she finally asked, her voice coming out strange and distant, as if it belonged to someone else. "Yes," Joshua responded simply, hands in his tuxedo pants pockets, his tie slightly crooked in a way that suggested he'd pulled at it impatiently at some point. "Why?" Savannah insisted, still not moving from the door, half convinced this was an elaborate hallucination brought on by too much Earl Grey tea and too little sleep. "For you," he said, and the direct simplicity of the answer was so devastating that Savannah felt the air leave her lungs all at once. She stared at him for a few more seconds, processing, and then the rational part of her brain finally came back online. "Come in. The neighbors will see, and they'll start asking questions I don't have answers to," she said, stepping away from the door to let him pass. Joshua entered the small apartment, and Savannah watched as his eyes roamed the space with obvious curiosity. The apartment was modest compared to his standards, probably the size of the closet in the penthouse he certainly had, but it was cozy, full of books stacked on practically every available surface and soft blankets thrown over the worn sofa. "You read historical romances?" Joshua asked, picking up a book from the pile on the coffee table, the cover showing a duchess in a period dress being seduced by a mysterious duke. "Yes," Savannah admitted, feeling her face heat up even in the privacy of her apartment. "Escapism. It's relaxing." "I didn't know," he said softly, putting the book back carefully, and there was something in his voice that sounded almost sad. "You never asked," Savannah pointed out, echoing the words she'd said to him weeks ago, and saw recognition pass through his green eyes. "I didn't ask," Joshua agreed, turning to look directly at her. "I should have asked. About many things. About you." The silence that fell between them was heavy in a different way now, charged with possibilities instead of discomfort. Savannah gestured vaguely at the sofa. "Sit. You're in a tuxedo in my apartment, and it's making everything really weird." A low laugh escaped him as he sat, and Savannah took the spot next to him on the small sofa, very aware of how close they were, their knees almost touching. "Courtney Houston is a lesbian," Joshua began without preamble, and Savannah blinked at the abrupt change of subject. "Married for 3 years to a woman named Sofia Marquez, who's also a businesswoman. The tabloids know but completely ignore it, because the story of the two of us as a couple sells way more magazines than the truth." Savannah processed that slowly, her mind racing to reorganize all the assumptions she'd made over the past weeks. "She's married?" "Very happily, according to her," Joshua confirmed with a small smile. "And she's a business partner, only a business partner, never was more than that, never will be more than that." "And all the others?" Savannah asked before she could censor herself, and immediately regretted it when she saw the way his expression changed. "Sorry. It's not my business." "It is," Joshua said, surprising her. "If we're having this conversation, then it is your business." He took a deep breath. "Most of the women the tabloids connect to me are made up. Pure fiction created to sell gossip. Some were casual dates, dinners, events. Nothing deep. Nothing that meant anything real. All ended months ago." "How long ago?" Savannah asked, and there was a part of her that already knew the answer but needed to hear it anyway. "Since..." He hesitated and then continued with an honesty that made her heart race. "Since I caught you stalking my Instagram." Savannah let out a laugh that was half shock and half hysteria. "You're telling me the most embarrassing incident of my life was a turning point for you?" "I realized something that day," Joshua said, turning his body slightly to face her on the sofa. "You saw me, not Joshua Wayne, the CEO, not the fortune or the fame or any of the things that normally attract people, just me, the person who posts ridiculous abs photos on Instagram." The laugh that came from Savannah this time was genuine, and she covered her face with her hands. "You're never going to let me forget the abs, are you?" "Definitely not," he agreed, but there was a softness in his voice that took any malice out of the teasing. "And you made me laugh. Genuinely laugh. First time in years, I think. I can't even remember." "Joshua," Savannah began, but he interrupted her gently. "Let me finish," he asked, and she nodded silently. "You were always the perfect assistant. Efficient, organized, anticipated everything I needed before I even realized I needed it. But you were invisible to me. It's terrible to admit this, but it's the truth. I treated you like furniture, something that was always there but that I never really noticed." The guilt in his voice was palpable, and Savannah felt something tighten in her chest. "You didn't..." "I did," Joshua insisted, his voice firm now. "Coffee without a thank you, reports without praise. treated you as a given, as if you were just part of the office structure instead of a real person with thoughts and feelings and a life outside that place. He leaned closer, his hand rising to touch her face with a softness that completely contrasted with the intensity in his eyes. And now you hate me, justifiably. I don't hate you, Savannah whispered, very aware of the warmth of his hand against her cheek. No? His voice was loaded with cautious hope. I thought you were arrogant, Savannah admitted with an honesty that surprised her. Impossible to deal with, too handsome for your own good, and I had an absolutely ridiculous crush on you, hence all the pathetic Instagram stalking. Had? Joshua asked, focusing on the specific word. Past tense? Have, Savannah corrected, feeling her face heat up. Present. Unfortunately, still have. Why unfortunately? He asked, his thumb tracing a soft line along her cheekbone. Because you're you, Savannah gestured vaguely at him, at the expensive tuxedo, at everything he represented. Billionaire. Famous. Live in a completely different world from mine. And I'm just the assistant who pathetically stalked you and got caught zooming in. Joshua kissed her, interrupting the rest of the sentence in a way that made her brain shut down completely. It was a soft kiss at first, almost hesitant, as if he was giving her the opportunity to pull away if she wanted. But Savannah definitely didn't want to pull away. Her hands found his hair, fingers curling in the dark strands and messing up the perfectly styled hair, and her body leaned into his on the small sofa. The kiss deepened, became more urgent, and Savannah felt the entire world narrow to just that moment. The taste of him, the smell of expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely Joshua, the way his hands held her face like she was something precious. They separated only when air became absolutely necessary, foreheads resting against each other as they both tried to catch their breath. It's not pathetic, Joshua murmured, his voice hoarse. It's adorable. You kissed me, Savannah said, still half dazed. I noticed, he responded with a small smile. Why? She asked, needing to hear the answer. Because I want you, Joshua said with devastating simplicity. For weeks. And I couldn't stand pretending I didn't anymore. But work, Savannah began, her mind already racing to all the possible complications. I'll transfer you to another department, or I'll step away from direct supervision and Derek takes over, Joshua interrupted, and the way he said it made it clear he'd already thought through everything. There are solutions if you want. You thought about this? Savannah asked, surprised by the planning. I think about it constantly, he admitted. About you. About how to have you without complicating either of our lives. And if I don't want to transfer, Savannah challenged, curious about the answer, then we keep it secret, temporarily, until we figure out how to make it work, Joshua suggested, but there was an uncertainty in his voice that was strangely vulnerable. Or, Savannah hesitated, biting her lower lip. Or I resign. Look for another job. No, Joshua's voice came out firm and definitive. You're the best assistant I've ever had. And, selfishly, I want you close, working with me. Even if it's torture not being able to touch. They kissed again, longer this time, deeper, exploring the newness of this with growing urgency. Savannah's hands pulled his tie completely loose, throwing it on the apartment floor without ceremony, and Joshua laughed against her lips. My tuxedo's going to be completely wrinkled, he murmured between kisses. You have dozens of tuxedos, Savannah shot back, pulling him closer. Valid point, he agreed, and then stopped talking completely. Eventually they separated again, breaths still accelerated, and Savannah started laughing in a way that began low, but grew until she was practically doubled over on the sofa. What? Joshua asked, confused but smiling. You left a gala, Savannah managed to say between laughs. For me. The paparazzi are going to lose their minds. I don't care, Joshua said, and the way he said it made it clear it was true. Joshua, Savannah began, but he interrupted her with another kiss, this one softer. Savannah, for the first time in years, I don't care what the tabloids say. I only care what you think. Morning came much earlier than either of them wanted, sunlight filtering through the thin curtains of Savannah's apartment and illuminating how Joshua was still in his tuxedo pants, but shirtless, looking for the tie that had been thrown somewhere the night before. Savannah was wearing an old college t-shirt and trying not to laugh at the way he was searching through her apartment. "Found it," he announced triumphantly, pulling the tie from under the sofa. "This is embarrassing." "You dropped it there," Savannah pointed out, taking a sip of the morning tea she'd prepared. Joshua approached her in the tiny kitchen, kissing her in a way that almost made the tea spill from the cup. "Tomorrow. Work. How do we act?" he asked against her lips. "Professional," Savannah suggested, but there was a playful note in her voice. "I can be professional," Joshua agreed, "but I'm going to hate not being able to kiss you." "The file closet is empty at 3 in the afternoon, Savannah teased, and the way his eyes lit up in response made her stomach flip. "Noted," he said, his smile growing. "Noted." He kissed her one more time before leaving, and Savannah stood at the apartment door watching him go down the stairs in the wrinkled tuxedo and still crooked tie, and allowed herself to believe, just for a moment, that maybe, just maybe, this could actually work. Chapter 5. The Secret and the Slip.
We're going to get caught.
Not if we're careful.
Monday arrived bringing an amount of anxiety Savannah hadn't felt since the day of the Instagram incident, and she spent an entire hour in front of the bathroom mirror trying to decide if red lipstick was too obvious a sign that something had changed drastically in her life over the weekend. Eventually, she opted for nude gloss and a silent prayer that she'd make it through the entire day without her expression screaming, "I kissed my boss on his sofa last night," to all her co-workers. Her arrival at the office was timed with the precision of a military operation, exactly 15 minutes before Joshua normally showed up, enough time to prepare his coffee and lock herself behind the computer screen, as if urgent work were a physical barrier against embarrassment. The coffee was perfectly prepared as always, exact temperature, no sugar, and she placed it on his desk with hands that trembled only slightly. Joshua arrived exactly at his usual time, and Savannah heard his footsteps before seeing him, her heart racing in a way that was completely ridiculous, considering she was a functional 25-year-old adult, not a teenager with her first boyfriend. She kept her eyes fixed on the computer screen when he passed by her desk, determined to look professional and busy. "Good morning, Miss Thornton." His voice came soft and formal, but there was something in the tone that made her look up against her own will. "Mr. Wayne," she responded, and immediately regretted it when she saw the way his green eyes gleamed with obvious amusement. "The coffee?" he asked, tilting his head slightly toward his office. "It's on the desk," Savannah confirmed, looking back at the computer screen as if the sales reports were the most fascinating thing she'd ever seen. Joshua walked past her toward his office, and his fingers brushed her hand in a way that definitely wasn't accidental when he grabbed a report from the desk. The electricity that shot through Savannah's arm was so intense she almost let out an embarrassing sound, and the way he smiled small before entering the office made it clear that was absolutely intentional. Derek Morrison appeared in Joshua's office 20 minutes later, as he always did on Mondays for the weekly planning meeting, and stopped completely at the door when he saw the expression on his friend's face. Joshua was smiling at the computer screen, in a way Derek immediately recognized as the expression of someone definitely not thinking about financial reports. "You're smiling," Derek announced, closing the door behind him and throwing himself into the visitor's chair with the lack of ceremony of someone who'd known Joshua too long to worry about formalities. "Am I?" Joshua asked, but didn't even try to hide the smile that kept pulling at the corners of his mouth. "Since you arrived," Derek confirmed, crossing his arms over his chest with an expression that was pure satisfaction. "What happened?" "Nothing," Joshua lied, turning his attention back to the computer in a way that was excessively casual. "Liar," Derek accused cheerfully. "You did something with Savannah, didn't you, finally?" A pause. Joshua considered continuing to deny, but what was the point? Derek would find out eventually anyway. "As to maybe." "Joshua," Derek practically shouted, leaning forward in his chair with an excitement that was completely inappropriate for a 30-year-old executive. "Finally. Are you two together?" "Secretly," Joshua admitted, his voice dropping, as if someone might be listening through the soundproof walls of the office. "For now. Until we figure out how to handle the situation at work." "Why secret?" Derek asked, frowning. "You literally own the company. HR policies, conflict of interest, and Savannah wants people to see her as a competent professional, not as the assistant who seduced the boss to get a promotion," Joshua explained, and the way he said it made it clear he'd already had this conversation with Savannah multiple times. "That's ridiculous. She's been working for almost a year and she's excellent," Derek pointed out reasonably. "I know, she knows. But people will think what they want to think." Joshua sighed, running his hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. Derek studied him for a moment before smiling. "You really like her?" "Obviously," Joshua responded, and for the first time didn't try to deny or minimize. Keeping the relationship secret in the work environment proved significantly more difficult than either of them had anticipated. They genuinely tried to maintain the appearance of strict professionalism, but there were moments when the tension between them was so palpable that Savannah was certain anyone within a 3-meter radius could feel it. Joshua had the irritating habit of finding excuses to brush his hand against hers when passing documents, his fingers lingering a second longer than would be appropriate, and Savannah retaliated by biting her lower lip in a way she knew he found extremely distracting. It was a dangerous game that neither of them could stop playing. At 3 p.m, sharp as agreed, Savannah stood up from her desk with a pile of old files that needed to be organized and walked with what she hoped was convincing casualness toward the file closet at the end of the hallway. Her heart was beating so loud she was sure everyone in the office could hear it. 2 minutes later, the closet door opened and Joshua entered, closing it behind him with a soft click and immediately turning to pull Savannah against his chest. "Hi," he murmured against her hair. "Hi," she responded, her arms wrapping around his neck, and then they were kissing with the desperate urgency of two people who'd spent the entire day pretending indifference. 5 minutes passed in a fog of kisses and low whispers until the sound of footsteps in the hallway made them both freeze. They separated quickly, Savannah grabbing a random file from the shelf with trembling hands, while Joshua tried to fix the tie she'd loosened. The footsteps passed without stopping, and Savannah let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "That was too close," she whispered, but couldn't hold back the smile. "Definitely," Joshua agreed, stealing one more quick kiss before leaving the closet first, leaving a strategic interval before Savannah did the same. Isabel's song intercepted Savannah at lunch with the determination of a professional interrogator, dragging her friend to a table in the back of the cafeteria where privacy was at least marginally possible. "You're glowing," Isabel declared without preamble, eyes narrowed in obvious suspicion. "I'm not," Savannah denied automatically, focusing intently on the salad she'd grabbed and definitely wasn't hungry enough to eat. "Savannah, I've known you since college. You're practically radiating." "Something happened," Isabel insisted, leaning forward over the table in a conspiratorial way. Savannah considered continuing to deny, but the desire to tell someone, to say out loud the absurd and wonderful thing that had happened, won. "Joshua kissed me," she admitted in an urgent whisper. The scream Isabel let out was loud enough to make several people in the cafeteria turn to look, and Savannah kicked her under the table. "Shh! He kissed you?" Isabel repeated at a marginally lower volume, but still too loud for Savannah's comfort. "When? Where? How?" "Saturday night, at my apartment. He left the gala and showed up at my door," Savannah recounted quickly, checking around to make sure no one was listening. "And you two are secret?" Isabel asked, finally lowering her voice. "For now. We don't want people to think I got promotions or favors because, Savannah gestured vaguely. "This is a soap opera," Isabel declared, eyes shining. "My best friend is having a secret romance with the billionaire CEO. This is literally the plot of one of your historical romances, except with offices instead of balls." "When you put it like that, it sounds even more ridiculous," Savannah groaned, sinking into her chair. The tabloids exploded on Tuesday with headlines about Joshua mysteriously leaving the gala on Saturday. "Joshua Wayne leaves gala abruptly. Trouble with Courtney? New secret affair?" The speculation was wild and completely incorrect, but Savannah read it all anyway, because apparently masochism was a permanent hobby now. She didn't tell anyone that the reason for his mysterious exit had been her. Secret meant secret, after all. But Courtney Houston saw the headlines and immediately texted Joshua, "Paparazzi freaking out. Did you work things out with the assistant?" "Yes, thank you," Joshua responded, adding a heart emoji that made Courtney laugh. "You're welcome. Now get me out of the tabloids. Announce publicly that I'm a lesbian," she wrote back. You want that? Joshua asked, surprised. Sophia wants it. We're tired of hiding. We want to post photos together without the tabloids making up that I'm your secret girlfriend, Courtney explained. I'll make the statement tomorrow, Joshua promised. The statement came Wednesday morning, posted on Joshua's Instagram with a simplicity that somehow made everything more powerful. Clarifying rumors once and for all, Courtney Houston is a business partner. That's it. She is happily and proudly married to Sofia Marquez. I ask for respect for their privacy. Courtney and I never have been and never will be a romantic couple. The internet exploded. Comments reached the thousands within minutes. So who are you dating? Why did you leave the gala? Is there someone? Savannah saw the post from her office, her heart racing as she read the words he'd clarified, publicly, for everyone to see. The part of her that had felt invisible, that had watched him with Courtney at events and felt that sharp pain of inadequacy, finally started to relax. The corporate event on Thursday was where everything almost spectacularly fell apart. It was a meeting of all the company's departments, an internal cocktail party to celebrate the closing of a particularly successful quarter, and Savannah and Joshua spent the first half hour desperately trying to seem normal and failing miserably. The problem was that Joshua couldn't stop looking at her. Savannah was on the other side of the room talking with colleagues from the marketing department, laughing at something someone had said, and his eyes were magnetically drawn to her every 30 seconds. "You two are obvious," Derek murmured next to him, taking a sip of champagne. "We're not," Joshua protested without conviction, forcing himself to look away. "You've looked at her 15 times in the last 10 minutes. I counted," Derek informed with obvious amusement. On the other side of the room, Isabel was having a practically identical conversation with Savannah. "He's staring." "He's not," Savannah denied, but could feel the weight of his gaze even without turning to confirm. "He is, like a starving wolf." "People are going to notice," Isabel warned, and Savannah knew her friend was right. The critical moment came when Joshua, in an impulse he clearly didn't think through completely, grabbed a champagne flute from a passing tray and walked directly to Savannah to hand it to her. Their fingers brushed when she took the glass, lingering much longer than would be appropriate, and at least 3 people around them noticed. A colleague from the finance department, Marcus, saw the exchange and frowned, his eyes narrowing in obvious curiosity as he observed the way Joshua and Savannah looked at each other. The bomb dropped Friday morning when HR called Savannah. "Miss Thornton, can you come to my office?" Linda Chen's voice, the human resources director, was professional but firm in a way that made Savannah's stomach sink. "Of course," Savannah responded, hanging up the phone with hands that were starting to shake. Linda's office was impeccably organized, and the woman gestured for Savannah to sit with an expression that was impossible to read. "Miss Thornton, we've heard some rumors." "About?" Savannah asked, internal panic fighting against the external face of professional calm. "About you and Mr. Wayne. Behavior? Close. At yesterday's event," Linda said carefully. "We're professionals," Savannah responded automatically. And technically it wasn't a lie, they were professionals. At work, most of the time. "I understand, but if there were anything, any kind of personal relationship, company policy, requires immediate disclosure. Conflict of interest, you understand," Linda explained. Savannah forced a smile. "There's nothing." And technically, at that moment, there was no official disclosure yet, because they hadn't formalized anything formally. But it was a lie by omission, and guilt burned in her stomach as she left the HR office. That night at Joshua's apartment, because his apartment had a kitchen that actually functioned properly unlike hers, Savannah told him about the HR meeting while he cooked something that smelled surprisingly good for someone she assumed had a personal chef. "Shit, someone noticed," Joshua said, dropping the wooden spoon harder than necessary. "What do we do?" Savannah asked, sitting on the counter of the absurdly large kitchen, legs swinging. "Double down on caution. Or, we make it official. You transfer to another department. Or I refuse direct supervision and Derek takes over completely," Joshua suggested, turning to look at her. "Not yet," Savannah said immediately. "I don't want people to think I seduced you to get a promotion or special treatment." "Ridiculous. You deserve a promotion. You've done 8 months of incredible work," Joshua protested, his voice rising slightly. "But they will think that," Savannah insisted. "You know they will." Oh, of course she got promoted. She's sleeping with the boss. So what? Joshua asked, frustration clear on his face. Careful, more careful, Savannah responded, but even she knew it was a temporary solution at best. Joshua crossed the kitchen and stood between her legs, hands resting on her hips. I hate this. Hiding. Me too, Savannah admitted, her hands finding his face. But for now it's just ours, he completed, kissing her softly. I like just ours, Savannah murmured against his lips, and for that moment at least, it was true. Chapter 6. The Revelation and the Future.
I'd zoom again.
3 months passed in a fog of secret encounters, stolen kisses in the file closet, and an impressive amount of text messages that definitely weren't appropriate for a corporate environment. The secret relationship was difficult in a way neither of them had fully anticipated, always looking over their shoulders, always measuring each word and gesture in public, always pretending a distance that neither of them felt anymore. But even with all the difficulty, even with the constant stress of keeping up appearances, it was absolutely worth it. Nights at Joshua's apartment were a refuge from the daily theater. Stolen moments where they could simply exist together without worrying about who was watching or judging. Hidden weekends were filled with Netflix, delivery food, and conversations that lasted until 3 in the morning about everything and nothing. And at work, despite the forced formality, there were prolonged looks across the conference room and small smiles that neither could completely hide. But both were tired of hiding. The novelty of the secret had worn off, replaced by growing frustration with the limitations they themselves had imposed. Derek finally confronted Joshua about it on a Friday afternoon, 3 months and 2 weeks after the first kiss in Savannah's apartment. When are you going to make it official? He asked without preamble, entering Joshua's office and closing the door with a definitive click. Not yet, Joshua responded automatically, but even he could hear the lack of conviction in his own voice. Why? Derek insisted, crossing his arms over his chest in a posture Joshua recognized as the "I'm not letting this go" posture. Savannah wants to wait until she gets a transfer or promotion, wants it to be on her own merit, not because of me, Joshua explained, dropping the pen he was holding and sighing. She's been working for 11 months. She's excellent. Promote her, Derek declared as if it were the most obvious solution in the world. I'm considering it, Joshua admitted, VP of Executive Operations, reporting directly to you instead of me. Eliminates the conflict of interest completely. Finally, Derek exclaimed, clapping his hands once. Do it. Promote her next week and then you two can stop acting like teenagers hiding from their parents. The general meeting happened the following Thursday. All company employees gathered in the main auditorium for quarterly announcements and personnel updates. Savannah was sitting near the back of the room with Isabel, having no idea what was coming, when Joshua took the stage with the confident posture of someone who'd done presentations like this hundreds of times. Before we start with the quarter's numbers, I have a personnel announcement, Joshua began, and Savannah felt Isabel poke her in the ribs with obvious interest. Savannah Thornton, who has served as my executive assistant for the past 11 months with a competence and dedication that exceeded all expectations, is being promoted to Vice President of Executive Operations, effective immediately. The shock that ran through Savannah was so intense she literally couldn't process the words for several seconds. Isabel was practically jumping next to her, clapping with an enthusiasm that was completely inappropriate, and the rest of the room had joined in the ovation while Savannah sat there, completely paralyzed. He didn't warn me, she finally managed to whisper to Isabel, her heart beating so hard she was surprised the sound wasn't echoing through the auditorium. This is romantic, Isabel whispered back, still clapping. Joshua continued talking, but Savannah could barely hear through the buzzing in her ears. The promotion is based purely on merit. Savannah has consistently demonstrated excellence in all areas of responsibility. She'll report directly to Derek Morrison, our VP, allowing better utilization of her organizational skills. After the meeting, Savannah practically ran to Joshua's office, closing the door behind her harder than she intended. You promoted me. You deserved it, Joshua responded simply, leaning back in his chair with a small smile. Months ago, actually, but I waited so it wouldn't look like favoritism. Joshua, Savannah began, But words failed when the magnitude of it finally sank in. "Now you report to Derek, not to me. There's no conflict of interest," Joshua continued, standing and walking to her. "No HR policy being violated. No reason to hide." "So," Savannah said slowly, processing the implications. "So we can make it official, if you want," Joshua completed, his hands finding her waist. "If I want?" "Do you want?" Savannah asked, needing to hear the confirmation. "Savannah, I've wanted to for months, to claim you, post about you, not have to pretend indifference every time I see you in the hallway. But I was waiting for you to be ready," Joshua said, and the sincerity in his voice made her heart melt completely. "I'm terrified," Savannah admitted, "but ready. Definitely ready." The Instagram post came that same night, and Joshua didn't warn Savannah before posting, which meant she found out along with the rest of the world when her phone started vibrating uncontrollably with notifications. The photo was of the two of them at a recent dinner they'd taken in secret, smiling at the camera with obvious happiness. The caption was quintessentially Joshua. "Found someone who makes me laugh, who sees me as a person, not as a CEO, who stalks my Instagram. Yes, Savannah, I'm exposing you publicly. Can't describe how lucky I am." "Joshua!" Savannah practically shouted into the phone 3 seconds after seeing the post and could hear him laughing on the other end. "What?" he asked with completely false innocence. "You exposed the stalking," Savannah protested, but couldn't hold back the smile growing on her face. "It's our story," Joshua defended. "It's how we really met." "It's embarrassing," Savannah argued, but the lack of heat in her voice made it clear she wasn't really angry. "It's adorable," Joshua corrected gently, "and now it's official." The comments on the post exploded, thousands arriving every minute. "Who is she? She's beautiful. Cutest couple. CEO in love is my new favorite." The office the next day was a mixed experience. Some people were genuinely happy, congratulating Savannah and commenting on how obvious in retrospect it was that there was chemistry between her and Joshua. Others were less generous, whispers starting immediately about how she clearly seduced the boss to get the promotion. Savannah heard a group from the finance department commenting near the coffee machine, voices deliberately loud enough for her to hear. "It's obvious, right? Convenient promotion right before announcing the relationship," a woman said with a sarcastic tone. The anger that burned in Savannah was quickly replaced by something worse: doubt. What if people really believed that? What if everything she'd worked for was tainted by association? Joshua, however, had absolutely no patience for that. He called a meeting of all departments that same afternoon and made a statement that left no room for ambiguity. Savannah Thornton earned the VP position through pure merit. 11 months of impeccable work, exceptional dedication, and competence that exceeded all standards. The relationship between us came after months of working together professionally, and frankly, it's nobody's business but ours. The silence that followed was absolute, and no one dared make malicious comments in front of Savannah after that. Courtney, who had become a genuine friend in recent weeks, found Savannah in the parking lot after work. "Ignore the jealous ones," she advised, leaning against her car with elegant casualness. "Hard," Savannah admitted. "Do you love him?" Courtney asked directly, without beating around the bush. "Yes," Savannah responded after a pause. "Does he love you?" Courtney continued. "I think so," Savannah said, but it sounded more like a question. "Savannah, he exposed you stalking on Instagram publicly to millions of followers. That's love or insanity?" Courtney laughed. "Probably both." Their relationship anniversary, 1 year since the Instagram incident that had changed everything, came with Joshua planning something Savannah only discovered when he took her to the same restaurant where they'd had their first official date. Dinner was perfect. Conversation flowed naturally as always, and when dessert arrived, Joshua pulled out his phone. "I have a gift," he announced, opening Instagram. The post he showed her was a compilation of photos of them throughout the year, moments captured in different places and situations. The caption was long and made Savannah's eyes fill with tears. "A year ago, I caught this woman stalking my Instagram, zooming in on abs. Yes, I'm still going to tease about that. I thought, interesting. Then, fascinating. Now, essential. Savannah, you see me, really see me. Not the fortune, not the fame, just me. The idiot who posts ridiculous abs photos. I love you completely. Thank you for stalking. You posted this? Savannah asked between tears and laughter. With all the embarrassing details? It's our story, Joshua defended, but he was smiling. Joshua, Savannah protested, but was laughing too. I love you, even though you're an idiot. He pulled a small box from his pocket. It wasn't a ring, not yet, but when he opened it, it revealed a delicate necklace with a heart-shaped pendant, engraved with her initial. A promise, he said softly, of a future, when we're ready. It's perfect, Savannah whispered, and when he put the necklace on her, the entire restaurant was watching, but neither of them cared. The wedding had been small and intimate, exactly as they both wanted, and Savannah Wayne, the name still sounded strange but wonderful, was now senior vice president of the company. She and Joshua worked in different departments, maintaining the professional separation that made everything easier. But everyone knew they were partners both inside and outside the office. Savannah's Instagram, which she'd finally created 6 months ago, showed a new post that was making her friends laugh uncontrollably. It was a photo of the two of them, embracing and smiling, with the caption, "3 years ago, I stalked my boss's Instagram, zoomed in on abs, got caught. Today, I'm married to him. Moral of the story, stalking works sometimes. Kidding, don't do this, I got very lucky." The comments came fast. Joshua, "You're never going to let me forget the Zoom, are you?" Savannah replied, "Never, it's tradition now." Courtney, "Cutest and weirdest couple I know." Derek, "She finally admits the stalking publicly." Joshua commented again, "Love you, stalker." Savannah replied, "Love you, abs." Years later, when the company had grown and the structure changed, Savannah was co-CEO alongside Joshua, their offices side by side in perfect symmetry. One afternoon, Joshua entered her office without knocking, as he always did. "Saw your Instagram," he commented, leaning against her desk. "And?" Savannah asked without looking away from the computer screen. "Post about stalking. Nostalgia?" Joshua teased. "Maybe," she admitted, finally looking at him with a small smile. "Miss when you secretly stalked me." "I still stalk," Savannah corrected. "It's just not secret anymore." "Proof?" Joshua challenged, and she turned her phone screen to show his Instagram open. "You posted 10 minutes ago, already zoomed in." "On the abs?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Always," she confirmed, and when he kissed her right there in the office, in front of the glass windows where anyone could see, neither of them cared one bit.